so close, it sits on your shoulder. So simple, world leaders can't understand it. It ain't in with the in crowd. It doesn't go where the in crowd goes. That's how hip is truth. That's how big is truth. Alright, hello there, thrill seekers. That was a little bit of a song called Truth. It was originally recorded by Chris Kakavas and Junkyard Love. And Dementia 13 used to play that song live sometimes. Our bass player, Joe Nofziger, at the time, he lived in Germany for a while, and he heard that song on German radio and taped it on a cassette tape. And we learned it from that cassette tape, and we didn't even know who it was by at the time, but we later found out who it was by. Anyway, today's video is kind of based around the theme of that song, and so let's talk about truth. I just came across a clip, let me make sure I get this right, and it is from a TED Talk called What Wikipedia Teaches Us About Balancing Truth and Belief. And it's by the former CEO of Wikipedia, Catherine Maher, at Maher, M-A-H-E-R, like Bill Maher, but no relation, who is now the president and CEO of NPR. And for those of you who are watching outside of the United States, NPR is probably the closest thing the U.S. has to, like, the BBC or something. It's a partially publicly funded radio station or radio network. So it's not quite the voice of the United States government, but it's getting kind of close. And this little clip I'm going to show you was a bit worrying to me in the characterization of truth by this person who's now running NPR. So let's take a look at the clip.
Because in our normal lives, these contentious conversations tend to erupt over disagreement about what the truth actually is. But the people who write these articles, they're not focused on the truth. They're focused on something else, which is the best of what we can know right now. Our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground. One of the things that we could all acknowledge is that part of the reason we have such glorious chronicles to the human experience in all forms of culture is because we acknowledge there are many different truths.
The articles she's talking about in that video clip, in case it wasn't clear, are the articles on Wikipedia, which she was the CEO of. And the whole clip, the whole TED Talk is all about how great Wikipedia is, and I don't know how great Wikipedia is, judging by my own page and the times it's been hacked and in the times it's said things that were clearly not true. But I want to leave that aside and not try to get into a diatribe about politics these days or Wikipedia or any of that kind of stuff. I'll see if I can avoid that. And I want to talk about this concept of truth, because the idea she seems to be espousing in this TED Talk is the idea that there are many, many truths, and all of these truths are more or less equal and whatever, and it's fine, and whichever one you want to choose is just as good as any other one. That seems to be a pretty common notion these days, and I think that some of it might stem from a misunderstanding, a very shallow misunderstanding, to put a point on it, of Buddhism. Because a lot of people are studying little bits and pieces of Buddhism these days, and little bits and pieces of Buddhism flow through the popular culture, and they get all kind of mangled up. And one of those ideas is the idea of two truths. Or I don't want to offend all the British people by doing that. Anyway, two truths, that's what I mean. Or two truths if you're German. Anyhow, there's this idea of two truths. Now, the idea of two truths is often discussed in sort of intro to Buddhism classes. I didn't hear much about it from Nishijima Roshi. What he used to like to say, and he said this constantly, is the truth is only one. Now, I was looking through a bunch of his books and things that I have on this laptop that I'm working with right now, that I'm talking to you on right now. And it doesn't seem like, at least I couldn't find anywhere in print where he'd used this phrase, "the truth is only one." But I did find a pamphlet he wrote called Buddhism in the Meiji Restoration, in which he talks about the idea of the two truths in Buddhism. And I'd like to read to you what he says. So let me look it up on my little phone. And to give you a little bit of context, what he's talking about before he gets into this is he's despairing of the idea that during the Meiji Restoration, certain philosophers in Japan who became very influential on the way Buddhism, sorry, the wind is blowing like crazy out here, who became very influential on the way Buddhism has been understood in the West, who ended up transmitting a lot of it. He singles out D.T. Suzuki and some other people. He's talking about how, not D.T. Suzuki specifically in this point that I'm about to make, but he singles him out as one of the people who is kind of leading this charge to revise Buddhism and make it much more intellectual. Anyway, he's disparaging the fact that in his mind this idea of two truths has been erased from Buddhism. Now, he's also talking about how this idea of two truths has been wildly misunderstood. So I'm going to read you the clip, or read you the bit that I chopped out of his pamphlet, and then see what I can see what I can say about it. He says, "Paramartha, which in Japanese is shintai, means the highest or whole truth or spiritual knowledge, often translated as ultimate truth. And samriti, which in Japanese is zokutai, means common occupation, being, existing, becoming, or happening, often translated as relative truth." So, Ziggy, hold on. Can I talk about this to the people? He's talking about, well, Ziggy doesn't like this idea. Anyway, he's talking about this idea of ultimate truth and relative truth, or spiritual truth and like earthly truth. For thousands of years, Buddhism has maintained a clear separation between these two terms. It's not easy to clarify the original meaning of the difference between these two terms, but we must attempt it if we are to have a clear understanding of original Buddhism. Then he goes on to talk a lot about Nagarjuna and his philosophy, and he kind of sets you up for what's going to come next. So I'm skipping over and going on to what he says after he sets you up. He says, "The human race is endowed with formidable intellectual powers, and our civilizations rest upon these powers of thought and perception. Sometimes, as Plato did, we find ourselves believing that the thoughts in our brains are real entities, or sometimes, as Karl Marx did, that we believe that the forms that we perceive through our sense organs, that's matter, are real entities. When he was sitting zazen, Gautama Buddha noticed that neither of these was true. Both are illusions. So the thoughts are illusions, and matter is also an illusion. He noticed that what was real was his sitting, so action. Sitting is a kind of action. It became clear to him that his thoughts and perceptions both existed in the area of conceived recognition, and that his act at the present moment was the only thing that was real. This simple recognition of the way things are is the fundamental starting point of Buddhism. Based on these explanations, I interpret samvriti, which, as you'll remember, which I don't remember, so I'm going to have to go up and look. Samvriti is usually means common truth, relative truth, like everyday truth. His interpretation of samvriti, it means our conceived recognition, the area of thinking and feeling. And paramartha, which is usually translated as ultimate truth, he says, means the Buddhist philosophical viewpoint based on action or reality, which is reality. By reality, I do not mean only physical matter, as is believed by materialists, but real experience, different from both thought and physical substance. This is really a tough point to get, and I studied with Nishijima Roshi for years before I really got it. But he would always talk about reality, and when I first started listening to him, I thought reality meant material reality. But he would say that material reality, is also illusory, and so are our thoughts. and action is the only real thing. Now, when it comes to truth, this is an interesting prospect, and there's no way I'm going to do it justice on a short video like this. Often the word dharma, I've found, especially in Nishijima Roshi's translations of various Buddhist things, is truth. So that's one translation of dharma is truth. So there is a kind of higher truth that can't be put into words, and we can only ever approximate it. And this leads some people to the belief that whatever you say is true if you believe it's true, and truth is just relative and nobody has the real truth. But in fact, the truth is only one, even if that truth is inexpressible. There's also honesty, which is honestly saying what is true, even if it doesn't reach the level of ultimate truth. I'll give you an example. That guitar that you saw me playing in the beginning is something I just got when I was in Las Vegas a couple of days ago. And it's an Epiphone. What do they call it? A G400 is what they call it. But what it is a copy of a Gibson guitar made in 1963. I'm hoping I didn't hurt the headstock when I picked it up just then. And so it's not the actual Gibson SG from 1963. So if I told you this was a Gibson SG from 1963 and not an Epiphone made in 2004, that would not be true. And whether I believed it was true, or whether I felt in my bones it was true, or whether I felt like this guitar was born in the wrong body and is actually really internally a Gibson Les Paul custom and not an Epiphone G400, it wouldn't be true. This is what it is. And that goes beyond the idea of there is only one true thing, and I think it is in our best interests, if we want to live a good life, to honestly say what is really true and to honestly try to accord with what is really true, even if the ultimate truth is unknowable. Because the ultimate truth, the real truth, the capital T truth, the truth that is the truth to end all truth, is only one. And what we are doing in Buddhism is we are trying to accord with that truth. So we're trying to accord with both this kind of ultimate, nebulous, unknowable sort of spiritual truth, but also the actual truth of things as they really are right here and now, even if we can't express it fully and completely, and even if there are different opinions and different people who believe different things about what's true. Now, the other problem is, how do we get along? And sometimes we get along by allowing people to kind of live with untruths that are fairly harmless. And sometimes you just got to do that. Personally, in my own experience, I'm not an argumentative person. So I don't like fighting with people over what's true. I just like to accord with what's true, and if people want to believe in untruths and they're not causing undue harm to me or other people, then I just have to be like, oh, okay, whatever, you just go ahead and do that. But I'll give you an example here. When I was in Las Vegas, I saw an actual Nazi. It was funny. I was walking out, me and my nephew had gone, who's Jewish, by the way, some of you know this already. We'd gone to an Indian restaurant, and afterwards we walked into this grocery store that seemed to mostly serve the Latin America, or what do you call it, Latino community. My wife is Latina, so I should be able to say this more articulately than that. We're walking out of this grocery store, and a guy is walking in who's got a shaved head and a giant swastika on his t-shirt and a giant eagle on his t-shirt. And I thought, oh, Jesus. My nephew was like, he was ready to throw down and start punching the guy, but I'm like, and he said this too, he's probably carrying a weapon, so we just let him go. Now, ultimately, that is a philosophy that can cause huge amounts of damage in society, and we've all seen it, and I don't know why people would want to align themselves with the biggest losers of world history in recent times. But I guess some people want to align themselves with these big losers, aka the National Socialist Party of Germany in the 30s and 40s. But, in the moment that we passed him by in the street, nothing was worth arguing about or fighting about. Maybe in an ultimate sense it is, but right here and now, in this moment, it's not worth the fight. And so we have to accord with what's going on in this very moment, right here and right now. And anyway, there you go. Maybe you think I should have torched that guy, but I didn't do it, or said something to him. But what is it going to do? Am I going to change his mind? I doubt it. Anyway, that's how we go. So, I hope you liked that. It went in a weird direction, but that's okay. We often go in weird directions here on this channel. If you want to donate to me going in more weird directions, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. Okay, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey, Ziggy, what do you think of truth? Do you think there's doggy truth and human truth? Do you think there's different kinds of truths for doggies and different kinds of truths for humans? Maybe you're right. I don't know. All right, let's go inside and edit the video. Okay, see you later, Ziggs.